Welcome to the ADF Insider Essentials series, which demonstrates the essential skills, tips, tricks and techniques that you will require for building ADF applications. In this demonstration you will see how you can delete a node or multiple nodes in a hierarchical tree. My name is Frank Nymphius and I'm from the Oracle JDeveloper Product Management team. Building trees in Oracle ADF is fairly simple. You have a collection, in this case based on a view object that comes from Oracle ADF Business Components, and you drag and drop this collection onto the Java Server Faces view. From the context menu you choose Tree, to then in the Edit Tree Binding dialog to select the number of nodes and the type of information you want to display in the node. The problem statement that we want to solve in this little video is to understand how the tree actually uses the view accessor to build the hierarchical tree structure. You should also learn how to delete the tree node from the context menu. So we're building a context menu that allows you to delete the selected tree nodes. And then we will learn how to use Java to access the tree, because once you understand how view accessors work, we know that not every tree node in the tree necessarily has a representation in the ADF binding layer as an iterator. So let's have a look. So this is the final result of what we want to build. So when we expand one of the nodes and then select one of the nodes here, right mouse click, we have a context menu that when we click this, purchasing as a node goes away. So let's mark several nodes, right mouse click, delete, and the nodes are gone. So in the next steps that we want to show within this video, we will explain how you build exactly this behavior at runtime. So let's start off by having a look at the application module, the data model that I exposed to the application developer. As you can see, I only exposed one view object, which is the locations view object. Now how do I build a hierarchical tree if all I have is locations? Because I want to show departments and employees as well. Now this is the secret of associations. Associations are internal structures that are implemented between entities and references that exist on the view objects. So once you read from a database table structure and create entity and view objects, what we create in the tool is view links and associations. And a view link connects a parent view object with its detail. So without exposing all hierarchy elements as view object instances, I can internally access this just by following the view accessor. And this is how you build trees, and this is why it's important to have this recording to understand how then you work with that structure. So let's build the tree. So I go to my data control palette, and as you would expect, there is an all locations entry here. So I drag and drop this collection onto my view, and I choose the tree as a component. In this opened dialog, I can already see the locations view, so I select the city. But then I can create additional node rules, and here we have access to the departments view through the view accessor. So though we don't have an explicit view instance, we can access the departments view based on the internal hierarchy. So, and then I want to create another rule for employees. And here I use the first name and I use the last name. There's also an option, just in case I do have an independent collection for employees or for departments, to synchronize this collection with the selection in the tree. And this is what the target data source is for. So we don't need to use that in this example, so I'm closing the dialog and have the tree created. Okay, so now I have my tree created. So let's have a brief look at the binding layer to see what actually happens in the binding layer when I created the tree. And what we can see is I do have one iterator, and I have one tree binding. So I have nothing that indicates that there is a department or employee involved, because this is all implicit, handled through the association. So back in the design view, what I want to do is I want to create a context menu. So for this I select the tree component, which I can using the breadcrumbs at the bottom of the visual editor, and then when I expand the tree, I see that the tree has facets, and one of the facets is the context menu. So this makes sure that the menu always opens where I select the tree, where I click into the tree using the right mouse click. So right mouse click here, insert into context menu, pop up. Next step is to insert a menu, and in here we want to have insert inside pop up, and I want to have a menu. And the last thing I want to do is to include a menu item which allows me to execute logic that I define later in the managed bean. So the menu item I just rename to delete, and the context menu that you create and all menu items will be shown in addition to the default menu that you have when you right click on a tree, which usually is used to expand nodes or all nodes or just collapse all nodes. So now I have the delete option. I just need to fill this a bit with life, and to do this I need to write a little bit of managed bean code. And first of all I have to create the managed bean. So I can do this from the action listener property here. So I'd select this arrow icon, go to edit, and then if I have an existing managed bean I can select that, or in my case where I don't have one, I just create one from scratch. So managed bean helper, I'll just call it tree bean helper. I'm going to create a tree binding later on, which means that this managed bean also becomes a backing bean, because it will have a tight binding to this page. So let's go to sample and put it into its own package. If the bean doesn't exist, just please generate it for me. So we keep that option, and then we come back to our action listener definition. And here now I can create a method that is called whenever someone presses the menu item. So to create the method I click new, and then I give the method a name, so on tree node delete. And OK, and you see the bean gets created. So before we move on to the managed bean and see what we can do there, let me point out a setting on the tree. And there's a setting on the tree that determines the row selection. So how many nodes can you select? By default it's single node. That means you select one node, and if you select another then the previous node will be released. But you can set it as well to multiple nodes, which then would work as in my demo, where you press the control key and then click on several nodes, and based on your selection those nodes then will be marked as selected, and you can work with that. Now to work with that I need access to my tree. So there's a binding property on our components, and this binding component or binding property allows us to create a reference, a JSF component reference to a managed bean, which will then create an instance of rich tree. So I select my managed bean and just call it, this is the, just call it tree1. So you might have better names in your business applications that you write. For this little sample, tree1 is enough. So let's go to the managed bean now. Okay, so this is the skeleton of the application I want to write, and you see there's an on tree node delete, and this is what we want to fill with life. So there's some stuff that I need to code. First of all, I need to get access to the tree. The next thing is I need to get a list of selected tree nodes. Then I need to delete tree nodes. And last but not least, I need to refresh the tree if nodes were selected. Oops. Okay, so let's fill this in. So the access to the tree is fairly simple because I created a tree binding. So the instant is rich tree, and let's call it T1 equals, and then we have a pair of getter and setter created, which I called get tree1 and set tree1. So this is my access to the tree. So that was pretty simple. Now we get an access to the selected tree nodes, and there's a class called row key set that's exposed on the tree, and this row key set will contain the selected nodes in the tree that the user selected. So, and let's get selected row keys. As simple as that. So as we have this, what we want to do is we want to create an iterator for that. So node iter, because we need to iterate over the row key set to delete all of the selected nodes. So now we can go to the next step, which is to delete actually the rows. So for doing this, we just create a while loop, which is node iter has next. Okay. So what we need to understand is that actually a row key in the tree is of type list. So everything I have in the iterator is of type list. So list node is import Java util list, and then we have node iter next, and we need to cast this to list. And the reason this is a list is because a tree node might be in a third level, in which case it has 3 primary keys on its path to the node at a minimum to identify the path. Alright, so I do have this. Now what I need to do as well is I need to get access to the tree binding. Now the tree binding is specific to the Oracle ADF binding layer. So, and for this I need to get access to the binding layer, and I can get this access to the binding layer through the tree reference. The component model for tree is a collection model, and that class comes from Apache Trinidad, and the collection model is represented by the binding, by the tree binding. So this is how I can get access to my binding, and all I need to do is just to call on my tree the get value, because the value of the tree is represented by the collection model. So now what I want to do is I want to get access to my tree binding, so to the ADF binding object, and this is of type GU control hierarchical binding. That's the class in the binding layer, a generic class that we provide within ADF, and this now I can call tree binding, and the tree binding, so I need to cast this. This is actually exposed through the collection model, and the collection model has a method called getWrappedData. So now I'm accessing the tree definition in the page definition file for this binding container. And once I have this, now I can go back to my delete operation, my while loop that deletes the different nodes, because now what I can do is I can access the different nodes through the node key. So again, there is a framework class JU control hierarchical node binding, and this node binding represents the individual nodes, no matter which level in the tree the node is. So let's call this node, and we get this from the tree binding. This is why we created the tree binding. And then there's a method called find node by key, and you see it expects a list to be passed in. Yeah. So just need to change this from node to node binding, so I have a unique name in here. Alright, so now I have access to the individual node, and the node wraps the actual row, and that's the interesting information to give here. So the node wraps a row, so that I can say, okay, node get, first import the node, so we have a better so node get row, here we are. And the last step, just to delete the node, is to just call remove on it. So this deletes actually the row from the iterator, from the ADF iterator. It's not yet deleting it permanently from the business service. In the ADF business components case, what I would need to do is I need to submit, which I do when I use the context menu, but then I need to call commit to persist the change. If I was working on GPA, on AGB or web service, I would take the information about the deleted row and have to call an explicit method on the side of the business service, like a remove employees or remove departments, or just remove object, and then have the business service side figuring out what type of object I passed. So in this case, just to delete it for the sample, it's enough as what I have it. So now what I need to do as a last step is to refresh the tree if there is a node selected, or actually selected for delete, and in the course of this little sample was deleted. So what I do is I just check again if the row key set size is larger than 0, which would indicate that there was some selection and not that someone just clicked on the context menu. And then to refresh the tree, I use ADF context, importing the class, ADF faces context equals, and then just use copy and paste for the sake of saving some time. So I can access to the current instance, and then I call on that current instance of the ADF faces context. I call add partial target, which will add the component I'm passing in here, the component reference, to the list of items that partially get refreshed when the response is sent back to the client. So, and this is it. So this is the code actually I needed to make the sample that you've seen before working. So what I did is I created a tree. The tree uses internal accesses just to access departments and employees. Then I selected the tree, defined a tree binding, so the binding property reference to a managed bean, so I get a hole on the tree instance in my managed bean. I then set the tree to either single or multiple node select. I created a menu, a context menu with a menu item, and on the menu item's action listener I created an action listener reference to this managed bean. And then here I access the tree. Once I have the tree, I get selected row keys, which is a list of lists that contain primary keys that demark the path down to a specific node in the tree. From the tree I get the collection model, and the collection model wraps the ADF binding object, which is JU control binding, and then I iterate over it and access every selected node, get the row out of the node definition. So JU control hierarchical node binding is just wrapping the row, and I call remove on the row. And then I just refresh the tree and we see the behavior as we've seen in the sample I run before. If you want to learn more about Oracle JDeveloper and ADF and its associated technologies, please go to the Oracle JDeveloper website on the Oracle homepage, which is oracle.com/technology/JDev. There we provide downloads of the software, tutorials, white papers, references to blog entries, access to the discussion forums on RTN, samples, source codes, and of course references to all the other information like ADF Insider and ADF Insider Essentials that you need.